So today we were going to go to the Monoliath Hills up at Newton Morn, but decided on doing Gulvain due to chasing the weather. And the weather was much better on the west. More west was best in this case. Wee bit of wild swimming. And today we had Sarah and Augie and Louise out with us. Now, the day started, I know a lot of people just cycling roughly about 7 kilometres to the hill, but it was a lovely day and I thought, what's the rush? Let's just walk in. And Augie was doing his first Monroe, which I had no doubt at all he would be absolutely fine. And Sarah was doing her something like her 5th or 6th Monroe, not too sure. And Louise was maybe about her 15th, something like that. But it was Louise's idea to get out today and do a hill, and then Sarah tagged along. She decided, can I come with Augie? But later on it became a little more eventful, but we'll talk about that a wee bit later in the video. The walk-in, roughly about 7 kilometres to the base of the hill, which is not taxing at all. I can understand why people would come with the bikes. It would cut off a fair bit of time. But there was a chap who left just at the same time as us, and he had the bike. He also had 3 collies, right enough. And we got to roughly about the base of the hill and he was there at the base of the hill. And throughout the 7 kilometres going in, he passed us, we passed him, he passed us, and then we met him passed him again at the bottom of the hill. So I'm not so sure, and there was another 2 girls cycled in, which we didn't know they'd biked in until the way back when they were flying by us on the bikes. But there's a couple of cheeky wee hills if you were cycling. So, but all in all, it would save you time. Just under 7k. Just under 7k to the bottom of the hill. now we start the ascent. Louise and Sarah are doing well. Hoggie's off ski. So we got to the base of the hill and the ascent began. And it did look quite a steep hill, a steep incline, and you could see ahead of us where further up the hill it started to zigzag, obviously to take the steep ascent away a wee bit, which was most welcome. As the walk starts, you're not far off at sea level, so you're going to feel every foot, every metre of the ascent of this hill, because you're not, as I say, you're not far off sea level when you start from the car. But as we started on the ascent, Louise was off. She was away in front. Augie, he was running up the hill to Louise and running back, and running up and running back. He's probably did the ascent about 3 times over. Poor boy, if we could only understand where he was going and what he had ahead of him, I'm not so sure he would be up and down the way he was doing it. But it was a cracking day, and the weather was good, and it was getting brighter as the day progressed. All was good. As we were going up, we were looking east, and all you could see was hills covered with rain, which made it all the more pleasing that I had picked this walk to do today. As we came up, we got to the top of the first wee plateau, and we could see the first summit ahead of us, and peeking behind it was the actual summit of Gulvain. Now, and I was saying to the girls, I wonder how many times people would come up here in the mist and the cloud and go up to this first summit and think that was the top of the mountain, because it did have a cairn, proper cairn, at the top of this top, and in a misty, cloudy day, you wouldn't know that unless you've done your research, that you need to cross over this ridge to go to the actual summit of Gulvain. The views now were absolutely fantastic. Looking west, the hills were great, absolutely fantastic. We were looking now along the ridge. We could see our goal ahead of us, which Sarah wasn't too chuffed that we had to climb up and go over and back down along this ridge and back up again to the summit. By now our wee legs were getting a bit weary, but we soldiered on, and the day was getting brighter and brighter, and the views were just fantastic. Looking all the way back down the glen and further along, the Loch Shiel was coming into view. We could see Ben Nevis, but the Ben Nevis top was always covered in cloud. Always covered in cloud. Here, Augie. Augie. It wasn't long before we were crossing over and we're on the wee ridge bit, and before long we were just doing the last wee ascent up, and there was Augie and Louise on the summit sitting waiting on us, and it's just a big mass of rocks, big pile of rocks, and Augie, proud as punch, sitting on the summit, his first mineral. There you go. You want to try now? Now that we were on our descent, Sarah's legs were now feeling the pain of the day, and it was small steps all the way, and the goal was just look at the wee bit ahead, get by that bit and the next bit, and then focus on the next bit, and slow progress. Louise continued to remind Sarah that stopping just prolongs the agony. Just keep going and get it done. But me and Louise were still feeling quite okay. Augie was loving life. He was looking for every wee locken to jump into the water. And as we started our descent, it got more difficult as the steep, it was becoming ever so steep, and Sarah was having to stop time and time again just to gather, let her legs just recover slightly before continuing. We weren't sure whether she'd actually injured her leg or it was just the pain of the ascent and now the descent that was giving her the trouble. Yeah. So as we carried on, eventually we got onto the path. Eventually. Seemed to go on forever. And our plans were to get back down the road, park the car, and I would be able to have, me and Louise would get over for dinner in the beer garden, a couple of beers, but that plan seemed to be go out the window as we had to nurse Sarah back to the car. But we'd done what we had to do to get her back to the car in one piece. So we got down the hill and we're on the path back, and Sarah asked me to at least tell her how long to go. I says about 7 kilometres to go. Right, can you tell me every kilometre? Can you tell me every kilometre as we pass, so that'll give me an incentive that we're getting there? I says, sure, I will do. So on we went, and we're walking away, and then a wee while later Sarah says, is that not a kilometre yet? I says, Sarah, we've went 300 metres. So she was certainly feeling it, because she was willing that path. And at this point we were saying, oh crikey, if only we were thinking about these people that are passing us on the bike, if only these people would give us a shot at the bike, let Sarah get to the car. But eventually we got there, and Sarah collapsed in the back seat of the car, and all was well, and we started driving. We decided just to have our dinner in Fort William, which ended up a fish supper on the way home. Was a cracking day, fantastic day, enjoyed every minute of it. Great to be out with the girls, and I'm sure once Sarah recovered, she'll be up for another walk once she recovers. Even although she did say, why did you invite me out? And I says, I didn't invite you out. You invited yourself to come with Augie. And she says, well, the next time if I invite myself, tell me no, I'm not coming. So, but I'm sure she'll recover and all is well. And no doubt she'll challenge herself to another Monroe someday. Anyway, if you've been watching the video, great, brilliant, hope you enjoyed it. And Gulvain, get yourself up there, it's a cracking hill on a good day.